Cell phones were created as the training wheels to create synthetic telepathy. That's what it's for.
What do you mean?
That's what it was
synthetic telepathy?
A way somebody could intrude into the mind through voice school technology, where there is a patent about that. It is out in the open. People do know, to come in and intrude on your conscious thoughts or your internal dialogue when you talk to yourself.
Welcome to this week's episode of Going Rogue with Lara Logan. Well, if you are a regular viewer to this show, one of the things that you've probably figured out is that I like to take on subjects that are extremely controversial, that a lot of people stay away from, but that I believe really matter for our future. Where are we headed, right? Because we can talk about 100 different things on this show, but to me, what is most useful to people is to talk about the things that are directly impacting us in the future, some of which will just blow your mind and are difficult for people to talk about. So many of you might have seen the recent hearings on MKUltra. Right. And there will still be some people in the audience or some people in the country who'll say MKUltra is sort of conspiracy and it's kind of made up. And, then there are other people that will defend it. And essentially what you have now with these hearings is that you have some of it on the record, on the official record of this country. But what people don't talk about is what is MKUltra really about, right? It's the battle for your mind, which is where we are today in 5th generation warfare and transitioning into 6th generation warfare, the battle for your mind and for your soul. And so when people think of MKUltra, they typically think about, CIA doing, weird, creepy programs with people with LSD, tossing people out of windows and the other things that you hear about. They don't really think about what was the ultimate effect of MKUltra, what came out of MKUltra. And one of the biggest things that came out of it is the technology that runs our lives today, whether it's social media or it's surveillance, data collection, all of these computer systems that are these control mechanisms that are machine controlled and generated, right? That are in the hands of a small group of people. So all of this leads us to a subject that I really want to burn into your memories. If we do nothing today with this conversation other than this, we will have achieved something. And it's for you to remember these words: cognitive liberty, bodily autonomy, and informed consent. This is really what we're talking about. These are the targets of systems like MKUltra. What they were ultimately coming for is your cognitive liberty, your freedom to question, your freedom to think, your freedom to have your own thoughts, your bodily autonomy, so that your body, you're not forced into some form of, like brain-computer interface where you're forced to have your brain attached to a machine or any other form of technology that might replace, for example, transhumanism, right? And the things that they want to do with transhumanism, the sanctity of the human body, the autonomy of your physical body. And then there's informed consent, which of course is what they went after with the COVID mandates, right? With the vaccine, the kill shot. That's what they were going after, was your informed consent. That's what they're doing today with parents who say, I don't want my child to get a Hep B vaccine, and the hospitals do it anyway. That is informed consent. And much of this comes out of World War II and the Nazis and the occult, which is something that we will discuss today with my guest, who is somebody that I consider a very good friend, someone I have gotten to know now over a number of years. He is one of the original whistleblowers on MKUltra. His name is James Martinez. And, a lot of people might know Walter Bowitt because he wrote the first book on mind control, but James and he co-authored the second book. And they work together. James is a behavioral scientist. He is also really a pioneer in what he calls disruptive technologies, right? Technologies that disrupt our way of living, our way of thinking, our way, really as a society, our way of functioning. And there is no one that I can think of who is more immersed in this subject, whether whether it's taking on sort of, narratives, it doesn't matter whether it's things about like energy, cold fusion, which James is also something of an expert in, or whether it's freedom of thought and speech, or whether it is here where we are dealing with something that goes to the heart of MKUltra. People think those programs ran from the 1950s to the 1970s. Really, where did they come from? They came in the 1940s. With many of these programs came with the Nazi scientists, right, that were brought in Operation Paperclip to the U.S. And then in the 50s, 60s, and 70s was really where you have a lot of these mind control experiments. But what was all of that leading up to? Well, to where we are today, where you have where social media, for example, is the greatest mind control experiment there's ever been. And one of the most effective. You have people all across the world saying the same things. People in Afghanistan talking about transgenderism when you don't even have basic women's rights. This is the kind of thing that they have managed to achieve with technology. But where it's leading us is much worse. And that's where I want to bring in James Martinez, born in San Diego, California. We won't hold that against him. Has lived and worked all over the world, frequently comes through my native Texas, has I don't know how, but this fabulously smart and beautiful wife who's French, sexy French lady. Yeah, so he's got it all going on. James has it all going on. But most importantly, this has been a lifetime of study and a lifetime of hard work. I know how hard you work, James. And I know how much you know about this really dark, secretive, shadowy world of who's making the decisions about what technology is allowed to do, what it isn't allowed to do, and how much of a say we have in this. So I'm going to talk about the lawsuit that you are part of against Palantir Technologies. We're definitely going to talk about that. But if we can start, a lot of people think, okay, I know my privacy is being violated. However, what's the big deal if someone, tells me that about a new motorcycle I can buy or this or that, right? They think it's just about the commercial advertising, or they say, well, my phone and my technology is now so integrated into my life, I can't survive without it. So there's nothing I can do. All of that is kind of making peace with where we are now, as opposed to where we're going, where we're headed. And that is why cognitive liberty, that's where it becomes so critical. So can you explain really what cognitive liberty is and what you see as the goal of the people who are controlling this kind of technology and making these decisions for us?
Yeah, cognitive liberty was coined a long time ago when Walter Bort and I set up the Freedom of Thought Foundation, which basically was the first 501c3, which was dedicated to preserving cognitive liberty, or the right of free thought, free thinking, and free autonomy of the body without any intrusion from any government or other person. Mm-hmm. And it was at that time, after we published the second book, Operation Mind Control Volume 2, which was basically all the effects of the previous book. The original book that exposed the program and proved it was written in 1978. The follow-up was written in 1992, and all of the chapters in there are dedicated to the effects of all the neuroscience and history that went in, and it had been going on in the United States and all over the world. And that's where we came out and discussed that, because we knew the end goals in the early 90s. It was not only Walter Bort, there was a bunch of people on our board, including Colonel Fletcher Prouty, that knew the end goals were ultimately going to be control human thought, perception, and to sort of create what Jose Delgado would call the psycho-civilized society. And all the steps to make that possible have been going on and inserted into culture over a long period of time. So this is ultimately about your right to have your own thoughts and have those thoughts be unique to yourself. These particular aspects and philosophy having to do with human autonomy, because we're actually turning into something else other than human, which we also discussed in the book, because we said that we were going to be at a bridge in the future where they would fuse all of the technology within the biology of the public. And then at that point, that would be the moment where the real cognitive liberty discussion would have to take place. And that's where we're at right now.
Okay, so how long ago did you write that book with Walter Bowitt?
That came in 92. So it was during that time we had access to psychiatrists, psychologists, ex-military, people that were elected officials, all came to us, or came to him rather, after he wrote that book, because that book and his name, you never hear that in the public ever. People don't even know who he is at all, which is surprising because the subject is not new now. His name is never even mentioned, but he was a very influential person in the 60s, and he found out and discovered all this because his neighbor was a Vietnam vet. And when he came back after the war, his whole personality was completely, totally different. And it was from that point that he started to put the pieces together of how long this type of research had been going on, and had been going on to the public. It had been experimented. All the experiments that people hear about, the drugs, the child abuse, all of those really dark subject matters, all of that data was synthesized to determine how best to reframe or frame a culture to put it into a position so that it would be where it's at now. That means voluntarily walk into a position where you would essentially suicide your humanity by fusing with technology. And we're almost there because of the relationship people have with their phones, which was, I've talked about this for years, about the technology of that and what it was really designed for, because it's basically a training platform to prepare people for telepathy. That's what it was for. And the pager, when that first came out onto the market, that was designed to alter your central nervous system and put you in a state of apprehension. Because when those first came out on the market, Walter Bowitt and I were watching that very closely. And he took a lot of the data and research that I'd done on just the behavior of wearing a device on your body, what that was for, what it was designed for. Because people don't really have much of a memory, but when that was first introduced to culture, everybody went and got a pager. And they attached to their body, and that was the new form of communication.
Oh yeah,
and people started coding. Yeah, they started coding the numbers and wearing it on their body, and there's different versions of it. That was the first step to voluntarily put you in a position to be interrupted by an outside signal. So that was referred to in media ecology. It's called the resonating interval. It's the which is basically this study of tactility between the senses. And to give an example, simple example that everybody has been involved with, is when you've been sitting down with somebody, you get a page or a text or a phone call, and it interrupts your line of thinking. Yeah. And then it shifts your attention to somewhere else. Yeah. And that's a phenomena that everybody can relate to. It's understandable, but it's a lot more sophisticated than that because of what the patterns are occurring in behavior when that happens.
Wow. So, James, what we're looking at today, from pagers all the way through to cell phones, is really, it's a very disruptive technology because it's disruptive. It's disrupted the way we think, the way we interact with each other, the way we function as a society, how we raise our kids. I mean, it's impacted every part of our lives. You know, here's something interesting. Americans love sushi, right? Over the past 2 decades, raw fish consumption is just skyrocketed. Sushi bars are everywhere. Millions of people are now eating raw fish on a regular basis. You can get it at the supermarket. You can get it everywhere. But there is a terrifying risk that is hidden in sushi that most people just ignore. And it's very simple. It is parasites. Salmon, which is one of the world's most popular fish, naturally contains dozens of parasites. Many of them are microscopic, so you can't see them. They're completely invisible to the naked eye, and they're nearly impossible to detect. So what do? They slip into your body, they latch onto your system, and they quietly multiply for years before symptoms ever show up. And that's if your doctor can figure out exactly what it is, right? And it's not just seafood that you have to worry about. There are millions of people who are exposing themselves to parasites right in their own living rooms through their beloved pets. I'm guilty as charged. Whether it is kissing your dog, yes, regularly, letting your cat sleep on your bed, I can't keep them off, or simply cleaning a litter box. We do that a lot with at least 8 cats in my house. Microscopic parasite eggs are incredibly easy to accidentally ingest and transfer to your gut. It's not something that any of us want to think about, but we really do need to think about it because it is affecting our health. And so that is exactly why leading medical experts like Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Lee Merritt are urgently sounding the alarm. An annual cleanse, which I confess I've never done, isn't enough anymore. If you eat out and if you travel, if you love seafood, or you share your home with pets, your body needs a strict preventative defense routine 3 to 4 times a year to stay clean and protected. You need Purge, advanced parasite cleanse. I love it, actually. I've started using it. My husband is using it. I'm trying to talk my children into it. Don't flood your body with harsh and synthetic chemical prescriptions that completely wipe out your good gut health. You don't want to be, that was like chemotherapy in the old days, right? It's helping you, but it's doing so much damage at the same time. You don't need to do that. You can, with Purge, what you have is a formula that is crafted with 18 elite natural herbs that have been tested and they've been proven for centuries to aggressively target and safely eliminate parasites from your system. And that's what you want, right? You want them out of your body. So if you haven't cleansed this quarter or this year or maybe ever in your whole life, and even if you have, you might be overdue. Fortunately, Purge has put together an exclusive bundle for my listeners that can get you started today. So go right now to purgestore.com. That's www.purgestore.com/Logan and use code Logan. You can save 10% off your entire order. And you will get, I love the bonus, right? When parasites die, what do they release? Toxic debris. So if you buy Purge, what you get with every single checkout is a free Toxi binder to safely lock onto that waste, heavy metals and debris, and flush it completely out of your body. And that's what you want, right? You're taking this because you don't want that stuff in your body. Don't wait for symptoms to disrupt your life. Go to www.purgestore.com/Logan and use code Logan and claim your free Toxi binder now.
Yeah, because they essentially, by our consent, they've gone in and readjusted our central nervous system, because the pager was designed essentially to interrupt your patterns, but also to adjust your central nervous system to create a preemptive response to something that would be coming. Because I would notice when I was first watching this, how people were responding culturally and socially with pagers, because they would actively be waiting for somebody to page them. Rather than being in a passive position, which was the normal behavior before. So that the intrusion of technology onto the central nervous system began to alter how we deal with each other and all communications worldwide. Because the phone as it is now is an extension of the central nervous system. And the extension of the nervous system creates the effect of instantaneousness, which is really what changed human behavior and allowed all this technology to come in to a central focal point. Now, that's not, I'm not the first to say that.
Yeah.
It's been discussed and widely spoken about by Marshall McLuhan, Walter Ong, other media ecologists and people that have been watching how we interface with technology and what ultimately it does to culture itself.
So, James, when you talk about us giving up our humanity, right? In what sense?
Because people have already done it. For the people that got the kill shot, they volunteered to take that. The property of that shot and the nanotech that's inside it is owned by a corporation. That corporation now has access to your physical body, because the physical body, by design, the plans were to create a physical body that would be like a motherboard of a computer or a transistor that the outside environment could interface with, so that you become sort of a co-author of your behavior while it's influenced from the outside. That's essentially what it was. That the whole point was to get the individual to agree to this. But I bring this up because people would think when they hear that, well, I'm not agreeing to that. Well, hypnotists can get you to agree to things by using something called fractionalization or microescalation. It's where you slowly introduce a subject matter into the person's reality and subject matter. And then when, depending upon how that language is used, put them in a passive receivership state. And then they agree to it. This has like been well documented with the military, because hypnotists like Esther Brooks and whatnot were able to put soldiers into resource states for assassination, even in front of an audience.
Yeah.
And this has been done many, many times. So this is just the electronic version of the partnership that they've gotten the public to agree to. Because, you know, when cell phones and all these technologies came out on the scene, they didn't call you, they didn't call me, they didn't call anybody about what the media ecological effects were going to be on the consumer.
In fact, they never mentioned it at all.
No, but they knew exactly what they were doing. They knew exactly what they were doing. And I brought it up to one of the main engineers that created the iPhone when I met with her privately on American Indian land. I told her, did you know the effects of when you created the mobile phone? And she did not. She did not understand what the effects were, because I was meeting with this person who was the chief of science under President Barry Soetoro, another, you know, made up plastic result of MKUltra. Yeah.
You got me there.
Well, I always bring him up because he's the most known. He's like the Rolls Royce of MKUltra victims, because his the core personality is not allowed to exist, because he's got to be this other person, and that was framed probably from extensive child abuse when he was younger, because he was raised by a transsexual. So, you know, and then he ironically matched that when he grew into adulthood and married a man. So I'm saying that, I'm illustrating and saying that because in MKUltra, when we were initially investigating all that, dissociative personality disorder or multiple personality disorder, that wasn't long ago. There was a small amount of cases when that was going on. When I first met Walter, there was a small amount. And then later on, there was thousands, hundreds of thousands. In fact, the whole mental health profession did not know how to deal with that. And that was an effect of all the neuroscience that was going on in the background in U.S. culture, which included child abuse, right? So I'm bringing this up because the mental health profession catalogs and codes behavior with law, okay? So if you are go and meet with a psychiatrist or psychologist that's an expert witness for a case, they have certain privacy issues related to that relation. Same thing as like with a lawyer, lawyer-client privilege.
Sure.
They're supposed to maintain all of this data. They know this has been going on for a very long time, because we had psychiatrists and psychologists that didn't want their names ever mentioned ever, because they were terrified because of all the psychological damage that has been done in culture over a long period of time. The inclusion of technology onto the people's central nervous system, that was done, and people are responsible for that by going out and buying this stuff. But they also agree to all the contracts.
Well, you can't use anything if you don't agree, James. I mean,
right.
You know, that's in your
nobody rebuts.
Right. That's in your lawsuit against Palantir. Right. Was one of the things you've mentioned in there, is the fact that these are harmful terms and conditions, because they basically deny the service to the user.
Right.
Okay. So I do want to go back to MKUltra and all of that and cognitive liberty, but I think this is an important moment for us to talk about this lawsuit against Palantir. So can you explain what it's about?
Yeah, the Palantir lawsuit is a result of hundreds, maybe thousands over a long period of time complaining about the power Palantir has over the public and over data that the public interfaces with, and what that means in terms of privacy and the archiving of all the data, keystrokes, audio signatures, everything having to do with your behavior. It's cataloged, and those language patterns that are used can be formed to create a personal overview of Lara Logan, and then by doing so, monitor through all the electronic signals and sort of declare pre-crime. In other words, determining what your next personality or your next behavior will be, and then capitalizing on that. And that's what was illustrated in the movie with Tom Cruise, Minority Report. It was all about pre-crime. And that was a Philip K. Dick thing, because he was aware of what was going on and the fact that they were going to be creating a sort of new civilization in the future where it would be controlled through the brain. That is what Larry Ellison, who's bragging in public, that how everybody's going to behave in the new era.
So you're talking about Larry Ellison, who is the CEO of Oracle.
Yeah, I'm saying that as an example.
Yeah.
Because he's made very public statements in a very arrogant fashion, as have the members of Palantir, the CEO and the other gentleman that just took off and is running now in South America. In Argentina, he's hiding there. Because for people that don't realize, there's multiple countries now that are striking down Palantir. France being one. They're no longer using Palantir. Another country I just heard yesterday is no longer going to be using Palantir because of the level of intrusion.
We kind of assume that people know what Palantir is. So can you explain? This is Peter Thiel's company that has a number of different programs, which some of which are named in your lawsuit as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Palantir
he has the contracts with the Department of Defense, Department of Homeland Security, and intelligence agencies, right?
Yes. This is bigger than Google. It's bigger. It's probably the most dangerous and biggest company ever put together.
Because it has to
do with the collection and collating of personal data on people.
Yeah,
and what they do with that data. But
people will say, oh, okay, there's lots of companies collect people's personal data.
Yes, but this one has been weaponized.
What do you mean?
It's been weaponized. For instance, I found out about this because I got phone calls about it, about Palantir technology and AI technology was used during this war with Iran, and they made a mistake with it, and it killed school children in a building.
You're talking about the supposedly the bomb that hit the school.
Yes. Those were done with Palantir technology. Now that's already come out, and there's been stuff in multiple media environments having to do with that and the discussion of that. But that is the military application of it with AI. But that is used for warfare. That has multiple applications. Palantir's technology, but it's primarily the collation of data, personal data, in the private sector for behavior and also for the ability to control the net content of human values and how we feel about each other. Because there's always, anytime there is new technology that comes out into culture, there's media ecological effects that happen to all perception. This is discussed. It's not new. It's been written about for years, and it has to do with the controlling the sensory input of your senses and how the senses relate to each other. Like if you and I are talking on a cell phone, and we've been talking that way for quite some time, the communication is different when we step away and we talk in an organic fashion, three-dimensionally with each other. It's two separate realities, and how those affect communication and values. Because right now, as everybody's seen, and I've said multiple times, you walk into a restaurant, nobody's talking because their whole physiology has been altered. They're looking into screens all day long. This is affecting everybody now. So people are giving away through contract and all their agreements with their phones, their computers, any of that stuff. When they have terms and agreements, we agree to the utilization of technology companies like Palantir and others to use that data because we've agreed to it. We didn't rebut to anything. This is the problem. So this lawsuit, which I didn't file, I know the people that did it, is about rebutting all of these agreements and asserting your rights, your right to think, your right to free will, your right to go left, right, however you want to say, and putting this back into check. That's what it's really about, because it's not a winnable thing. It's not a winnable thing.
What do you mean?
Lawsuit. Because it will be buried in paper. That's what most likely will happen. Is it won't be winnable, and the people that have filed it won't be able to keep up with the amounts of paper that they're going to pile up against us. But that's not the point. The point is something much bigger. It's to dissolve the relationships with Palantir by reorganizing how people communicate and how they behave. One of which is reading contracts and rebutting contracts and cutting contracts. And I deal with people that are exiting this entire paradigm and cutting their contracts with everybody, getting new phones, dumping Windows and Apple, going to Linux. This whole new pattern is happening right now in culture. Yeah. Because people realize that I know of that they have been bamboozled and they've walked into this by their own free will, and they're putting a stop to everything right now. So that lawsuit combines, it covers a lot of information having to do with how information is handled by these companies. And where is all the data? Like, how come you can't, like the data at the airport, you just went through the airport. They have your pictures. 100%. They say clearly, they say clearly in those pictures that they delete them in 8 hours.
Yeah, I don't believe them.
No. They're not doing that. They're not doing that at all. And nobody's going to check that because nobody knows where the data's held.
Nobody knows where to check.
That's right. You have to get it. I went to an airport. I discussed what that. They were very rude about it when I went and inquired out, because I said, I want all my data and who has it. And I want proof in writing that it's been canceled. So there's all these elements that are going on that affect free will and behavior.
Okay. That airport thing is a good example, because they do have a little sign up there that says you can refuse to have your picture taken if you want to. But sometimes I'm just so, well, first of all, I didn't see that sign at first. So I'd already been through a number of times. They already had my picture. So I figured, what am I doing now? What's the point? Then sometimes you're running late or whatever, and you don't have time. You just want to get through the security, or you have your kids with you, whatever it happens to be. And then, other times you just think, okay, well, I'm never going to win this battle. I got some person from TSA, no disrespect, but we know that they're the bottom of the food chain, right? And they're not the ones who are equipped. No, they don't know anything. So now I'm going to have a long conversation with someone who's not responsible, who may or may not even agree with this, and is probably not going to be able to help me, and you just give up.
Right, because people aren't used to pushing the envelope on that deal, because they've been conditioned not to push their rights because they think they already have their rights all intact.
You look around you and everybody else is going through it and no one else is saying anything. So that's another thing, right? Is that herd factor where you're like, okay, it's just like when I go to vote. And in my county in Texas, they say we have paper ballots. No, I sit down there and I make my little marks on the paper, and then I stand up and I hand it over. I walk over to a machine. I put it through a machine, and a QR code pops out the other side. And I say to the election workers, "Where's my ballot?" And they're like, "Well, it's right there." And I'm like, "How do I know that's my ballot?" They're like, "Well, because you just put it in the machine." I'm like, "So what?"
No.
Like, can you read that code? They're like, well, I can get the election supervisor if you want. You know what I mean? They don't want to talk to you. So the person standing next to the machine is, oh my gosh, who is this difficult person? And then they call over the election supervisor, and he starts assuring me, oh, I assure you, we do these audits and it all matches and there's all the processes are in place. And I'm just like, guy, you're not getting it. You have no idea what that machine is spitting out. You're not in a position to reassure me.
Correct. So you're pushing that, and most people don't push that when they should be pushing it, because the people on the other end of those conversations usually aren't qualified to even answer and don't know the answers.
No, but then I want my vote to count. You know what I mean? So I walk out and I've done nothing. I walk out, I let it be, and I've achieved nothing.
Correct. Yes, that's absolutely right.
Which is what I take. This is what this lawsuit against Palantir is about doing something. It's you filed that the plaintiffs are Jane Doe and John Doe. So it's really on behalf of all of humanity.
Correct.
Which may sound, grand and sweeping and impossible to some people. But my question to you, James, is why are you targeting Palantir? Because when you talk about data collection, I mean, you just mentioned Apple, you mentioned Microsoft, I mean, Google, all of these people are collecting our data. So why go after Palantir?
Because they're involved with warfare.
And so? I mean, the others are involved with information warfare.
If they're involved with warfare, that means they have a right to utilize that technology against you. And that is the problem, because they can't ensure any safety over us using that technology at all.
What do you mean?
And they can't, just like the airport people, when they say they cannot access the data that took your pictures and ensure that it's been deleted, as they say it has. Yeah. I would say something is similar that way with Palantir. They can't guarantee that our safety at all. See, this ties in, and unfortunately it ties in to all the current activity with the brain-computer interface as well, and wearables, and all the electronics that are going to be tracking.
You can't rush
brain
through
data.
these things. You got to explain brain-computer interface. Explain it, please.
The brain-computer interface is the top of the pyramid in warfare, and that's where nobody is paying attention to, really. It's all on, everybody's misdirected, because the real powers that be are interested in capturing and captivating and controlling the human mind and human behavior. And the brain-computer interface is the final stop. It's essentially the crossroads of transhumanism, because once you fuse voluntary or involuntary with computers, technically you're not human anymore. You're cybernetic. This is already, we're already there, right? At that point.
Okay,
then
so
your rights.
Is that what Elon Musk is talking about with uploading your consciousness to the Internet of Things and having this altered human experience?
Yes, that conversation that he's talking about, you should be involved. I should be involved. The public should be involved. Everybody should be involved, because he is making value judgments on behalf of everybody. And that should be an open, transparent conversation. Right. Because once you get to a certain point, you cannot return. And this is what are the legal ramifications of a real living man, human, organic, and somebody that's cybernetic? Yeah. And what are the differentiations, and do they have the same rights? Are they covered legally? All these things are not being discussed at all. And if they are, let me backtrack to something that you recall. I put you in touch with Brandy Smith.
Yes, Brandy was on this show.
Yes, because she hears all the conversations with multiple countries all over the world that are involved with technical standards having to do with wearable devices and how those transmit data from the user to a computer or some other system for monitoring, right? Yeah. So
things that we don't even think about, but that affect us every single day.
Yes, absolutely. So it's this fork in the road that has to be stopped now. And the reason is because if people want to do that, fine. But if you don't want to do that, unconsciously or consciously, you're going to have to rebut, and you're going to have to notify everybody around you contractually on paper that you are not going to go that way. And I've already begun that process personally myself, and some other people have as well. people that have come to me.
James,
because you have to recontract with all the technology that you've agreed to with, and I'm not agreeing to any of that. I've already told it in writing.
But if you've used if you've used the technology and you've clicked I accept and all the rest of it, haven't you already agreed to it? Can you renege on that original agreement?
No, because you can rebut contracts. Well, that's what courts are about.
Also because you didn't fully understand what you were agreeing to, and they didn't fully explain it.
Everybody on this that's watching this, most of them have credit card agreements or have credit cards. Nobody read those agreements. Nobody even understands them. And they sure as hell don't understand any of the agreements they sign up with their iPhones or Androids or PCs or any of that stuff.
No.
We just roll through it. It's a tacit agreement, contractual agreement. And this has to bring, because this is all going to come down to law, ultimately. The whole thing is going to come down to that. And who has a right to do what? And do you have a right to say no and not agree and not go along with the group cohesion or the group think of going down this road and ending your humanity? So, that's really where all this goes. The MKUltra hearings were like a history lesson and completely irrelevant to where things are now in the present.
Yes.
Where we are in the present are these agreements. They're very important.
Yes, the things that people find very boring. I mean, it's much more exciting to talk about, the CIA doing experiments with LSD on human beings and, covering up their deaths. That's the stuff of movies and Hollywood. Signing an agreement on your Apple iPhone or what, for some app or whatever it is, your credit card, that is very much in the category of boring.
Boring, but it's also the people that are damaged that I deal with on a daily basis that contact me. They want remedy from damage that's been done to them. And when I talk to them, they come to me and say, this happened to me and this happened to me and I was a victim of this and then mind control this and this. And I said, well, do you have a phone? Did you agree to this? Did you do this? You have to build a case before you can get remedy.
Right.
You have to do all of that stuff yourself before you can even expect to get any remedy at all for the damage that's been done. But the part of the huge problem is our agreements. You don't need to use this technology. You don't need to buy the glasses that Facebook is putting out.
This is what you mean by wearables, right? You don't have to get the Fitbit or the Apple Watch or the glasses or any of that.
Yes, correct. Yes, we need a complete reevaluation and a completely different conversation about what our relationship to media and technology. Because it's never discussed, as I said. That's what I'm saying. Nobody called you and said, by the way, we're going to steal your children from you as soon as you give them iPhones, because they're not going to talk to you anymore. They're going to be texting everybody all the time. It's going to affect their school. It's going to affect their education. It's going to affect their attention span. It's going to affect their own reasoning and cognition, all that. They didn't say anything about that. And those things need to be discussed before the technology comes out, not during or after.
Yes, although that ship has sailed because the technology is already out there.
Correct. But you can stop and you can rebut, which is what's happening now. That lawsuit is a rebuttal to all of this. Okay. It just happens to be in Palantir because it's the biggest and most powerful. Right. And it's the one that's collecting all that information on people.
Right. And I want to go through some of that in detail on the lawsuit and look at what Palantir is doing. But before we do that, James, you say we can rebut and we can stop. The argument against that is that China and the U.S., this is the new arms race of today. And that China, that you've heard even the Trump administration say repeatedly that America has to dominate AI. America has to be at the beginning, at the forefront of this. America has to win this war. America has to be in charge, et cetera, et cetera. And then at the same time, I read that, companies that say that they would never turn to China for their AI are all using China-based AI foundations and platforms to build their own AI on, right? So so the Chinese are being intrinsically built into all of these systems that we're creating. And so how do you counter the argument that if we stall, if we stop, if we hold this up in courts, because obviously China doesn't have, the people don't have any rights whatsoever. The CCP is a tyrannical Marxist organization that just stampedes and tramples all over its people. So, what does that say for the U.S. if we're going to be? I mean, ultimately, I don't want to be controlled by machines, but if there's nothing I can do about it, I certainly want it to be American and not Chinese.
Those are good points. And they're also good points because I've been in discussions and private phone calls about this situation for a very long time. And people have been always asking me, how did China get all this power? Well, we gave it to them over previous administrations over a long period of time. Because as you know, China was going to be the HQ of the global government, right? So everything that's going on in China, technologically and behaviorally, has been tested and utilized on that public. because they're already using these type of systems on the public there, right? So in conversations that I'm having with Brandy and other colleagues that I have, there's a plan in place to completely redesign all our phones and computers, all the way from the material that they're made by to the chips, so that they're American made and there's oversight about them. Because we gave all this power to China. Because I've been in conversations where information that we've been trying to get to certain people has been blocked on purpose. It's made it all the way into the Oval Office. And then when it's been discussed, it was either shunned to the side as not important, or it wasn't acknowledged at all. And those conversations have had happened months ago. Because of the situation that we're in now, because the BCI committee, as you already know, is not supported by the United States at all.
And that's the Brain Computer Interface Committee, this committee that decides the terms on which all of this technology.
The U.S. are the leaders. We're the leaders of the technological overlords of everything.
But we don't have anyone on the committee deciding what our rights are.
No. In fact, everybody's being ignored totally on purpose. Because they don't want these things to be addressed that we're talking about at all.
But that doesn't, James, you didn't answer the question completely, because really my question is, if you've got all these checks and balances on this, right? You have a constitution that the Chinese don't have, Declaration of Independence, right? All of these things that protect our rights. And you use that to take control over this beast that to me feels like a runaway train right now. And the argument is going to be, well, we can't do that because we're going to lose this race to China. Yeah.
Well, behind the scenes is the story is quite different, because I hear it on a daily basis.
What is the story?
The story is there's a power struggle between the people that sold out to China and are responsible for aiding and abetting and giving all this power to China, including technology from previous administrations. That's all been put in place a long time ago. And the people that want to return to America only, America first. And that struggle I hear about almost on a daily basis in conversations that I have with my colleague, Brandy Smith, about this, who's leading the charge on her own. Because she's got no assistance from our own government about this. And they won't answer or respond at all.
Well, who would you even go to in the government about that? I mean, who's responsible for that?
From my perspective, it's the technology companies that have got so much money and so much influence.
But that's not in the government, right? So who in the government?
They influence the government, though.
Yes, but you said the government is not doing anything. So who in the government do you talk to? I mean, I get that the big tech guys, they all have a seat at the table, and they're happy to influence. There's been no conversation that I'm aware of with any elected official in an authority position about this at all, because they don't want to deal with it at all. They're not responding to her. They're not responding for her cries out to other colleagues in official capacity positions to even deal with this, because either they don't know or they don't want to deal with it because they're actively involved in aiding and abetting this kind of fusion between a normal organic human being and one that fuses and gives up everything
to the technology companies, and you marries technology and accessing your brain. That's where the whole thing is.
James, can you explain to me again? Because I think it's such an important concept, and I don't want to, we just flew past it. Cybernetic. Tell me again what that is. That is
a guy, the authority on that was a guy named Weiner, I believe, who termed the first thing, or that word, cybernetic. And it was basically to using the central nervous system to create information systems that can control group behavior. There's a long, lots of research about that. And that's where it came from. Cybernetic means that you are actively participating in something that is electronic, any device that you're attaching to your body. Mm-hmm. When you're standing alone, you're not cybernetic, you're not connected to anything. When you put your phone on your body, or you put your plugs in your ears or whatever, now you're having a cybernetic position. It's just outside of your body. The object is outside of it. Now they're already inside of it, because of some people that have taken the kill shot, which had all that nanotech inside it, right? Mm-hmm. They're already cybernetic, right? When you have a phone next to you, that's the first step to becoming cybernetic. You can take the phone and throw it away and put it over in another room, and you're not involved in it. You're not responding in the same way. That's what cybernetics is.
So, but even cybernetics is still a step towards where we're going, right? It's not the it's not the ultimate.
It's the training wheels. Right. It's the training wheels. Mm-hmm. The cell phones were created as the training wheels to create synthetic telepathy. That's what it's for.
What do you mean? That's what it was synthetic telepathy?
A way somebody could intrude into the mind through voice school technology, where there is a patent about that. It is out in the open. People do know, to come in and intrude on your conscious thoughts or your internal dialogue when you talk to yourself. I have lots of people that have come to me that have experienced this and are trying to get a resolve over it.
Wow. Okay. So would an example of that kind of thing be repeatedly telling a young boy, giving him sexual thoughts and fantasies about boys to condition a young man into thinking that
you could use it for that.
That he's bisexual or gay.
You could use it for that just as much as you could use it to find a particular individual and install an assassination program into them. Condition that into their behavior with a handler, and then get them to induce actions like that, which we've seen countless times, because most of the assassination attempts that you see in the U.S., the person has a behavioral problem to begin with, and they're using psychiatric drugs of some sort as an accessory to linguistic programming or electronic programming on an individual to get them to do something, and then have them be in a dissociative state when they do it. Because you have to be in a dissociative state to kill somebody.
Okay, so this disassociation, you can't
right? Do it.
This disassociation is a critical part of mind control, because we see it all the time. This is why
very critical.
When kids are watching videos on YouTube and there's one of these robot voices that is speaking in a monotone, and you're disassociating that child, that mind that's hearing all of this with the emotion of these things that they're talking about. I mean, it's unnatural to talk about things, sort of somebody dying or being killed or something very emotional in a complete monotone, right? And if you keep everything in the same tone of voice, and you're disassociating kids with the reality of what they're hearing about.
Yes, disassociation is if children are witnessing extreme violence, either on them or witnessing it, the brain will protect itself. It protects itself by creating an outer shell. It's like PTSD turns into dissociative identity disorder. It starts off at that, and it's the brain's way of protecting itself. Your brain is designed to protect you, self-preservation. So when trauma is induced on the body, you create something called a dissociative state, so that the emotional impact is lessened. That's a natural phenomena that people do all over the world to protect themselves. But you're not supposed to stay in that state. You're supposed to be in an associative state. Psychiatrists and psychologists, they understand this. they understand that entirely. Because when you have an associated emotion or associated response to somebody in front of you, you're actively involved. It's not something outside of you that you're desensitized to, and you're numb. Dissociative people are numb.
Well, if you,
as a response,
if you look at the whole of social media is disassociative in a sense, because
yes, it's designed for that.
Right, because it's isolating us from the real world, right? We're now living in this digital world where things may or may not be real. Some of them are and some of them are not. But also we know that what people are willing to say in a text message or in a social media post is very different a lot of the time to what they're willing to say when they're sitting one-on-one confronted with someone, right? You're looking somebody in the eyes. Now, when you're physically with someone, that's associative. Right. And when you're at that distance, you're going through the phone or through the app or through the social media platform. Now, suddenly there's a sense of disassociation.
Yes, that's the famous quote, the medium is the message, that Marshall McLuhan talked about, because the medium itself distorts and changes the communication between two parties. So, and there's a whole field of study having to do with that, but you're exactly right. That's what it does. And it decapitates the original organic personality, and it harvests and creates a digital personality that doesn't match the one that you are. And it alters value systems and all sorts of things as well.
But yes, alters value systems. That is a critical one because, people talk about MKUltra in terms of Manchurian candidates and creating a single person, like an assassin who's going to go and kill someone, right? But essentially what they have done with social media and technology of today is they've created that in the entire global population that is exposed to these tools. So in a sense, we think of, we know MKUltra began in the 1940s with the Nazi scientists and Operation Paperclip, but it really it's the 50s, 60s, and 70s that are most burned into our mind. We think that MKUltra really kind of, in a way, ended, but actually what it did was produce what we're dealing with today, where you're not able to just influence one person or a few, key individuals, but you've now instilled a disassociation in entire populations and changing their value systems, changing the way their brains operate, changing the way they interact with each other. It's unbelievable. So in a sense,
now the impact on Americans, because culture in America, because all the technology is tested here first, it's vastly different than other countries. Because when you go into other countries where the cell phone has first been introduced, the behavior is quite different. We are bombarded and drowning in technological impact on our nervous system in the United States. That's why there's so much violence and there's no response to it. We're numb from it. We're totally disassociated from the current state of affairs. Others are reporting about some of the most horrific crime that's ever been perpetrated on the human race before. And we're not responding in an associative state. We're responding in a dissociative. It's over there. It's not here in here. Because I've said this because it comes down to this. The heart of the matter is a matter of the heart. And there's no heart in any of this stuff going forward at all. None of it. Because it's not been properly discussed with the people on the ground and the people above us that are governing us.
No.
And all these technologies. These wearables that are coming out are going to be sold through health programs and incentivized to sell you on the fact that, well, my dad has a heart problem, but we can't afford to keep him in the hospital all the time. Fine. You can put this wearable on and we can monitor his heart from 50 miles away, and it goes into a data system, and then we can tell and get an alarm off if he's going to have a heart attack or something. That's how it will be sold, and that's what Musk is doing, because he's got to condition his whole operations to get people to agree to this. So they're gonna say all the benefits of it, but they're not gonna follow, McLuhan's tetrad, which was the design mechanism to show how technology affects human behavior and what it does and how it completely controls and alters culture. This fusion between man and machine through the wearables, which is the first step. Just you wait till you see what that's going to do. The effects of that. That will end the family. It will end family cohesion. It will distort society and roles.
How will it do that, James?
By the effects of it, like the cell phone, it altered social space completely. Example, I always use this because it's visible in everybody's behavior. When you go into a crowded restaurant, it's not like it was in the 70s or 60s in Europe where everybody's talking and it's loud and people are using physical. No, that's not that. It's not that. People are inverted into the field that they're paying attention to. That everything's interrupted. You go into a coffee house, everybody's inverted. They're not talking to you.
Okay, but how is that the same as someone who's a diabetic having a wearable that's telling them what their blood sugar is?
Because that device that they would use would send a signal that goes into a data system, a computer, a hard drive. And then that drive and that data that's in there, they says it's protected, but is it really? Can somebody break in and take that? Yes, they can. So we have a big problem. So he's going to introduce all of this, but they've got to normalize all of this and make it fun and make it happy and make it fashionable, which is actually what's happening now because they're advertising this new behavior and this new beginning. It's already coming out all over the place. I'm already seeing it. People have called me about it already. It's a big danger because we're ending our humanity. They're actively getting you to participate in your suicide, in your humanity. That's the real thing.
Well, okay, so there's so much I want to talk to you about from that. But if we stick with the technology side of it, so I'm hearing from a lot of parents, especially new parents these days, who are saying to me, I'm not vaccinating my kids, or I'm just doing very limited vaccines, and we're not getting a phone or an iPad. Now, I know there's plenty of people who, the moment the child is born, they're on the phone, they're on the iPad, they're on the whatever. But I'm just saying there are more and more people. I just went to a wedding where they said, please don't bring out your cell phones during. Yes, people are rejecting this because they recognize that when they're standing there getting married and everybody's on their phones, it's not worth 102 photos. They said, we'll give you the photos that we take. You can have all the photos you want. Just put your phones away and don't take any pictures. I confess I did sneak a few pictures because my mother-in-law made me promise I would. But for the most part, people did put their phones away. And so people are rejecting it on the one hand, but then on the other hand, someone said to me, this little baby, she said she's even figured out when she touches her mom's Apple Watch, the light comes on, right? So she doesn't really, she's not sitting, she's 10 months old. She's not sitting on the Apple Watch, but she knows that's a fun thing because when I touch it, a light comes on.
Yeah, stimulus response.
Stimulus
Skinner
response.
box psychology.
Yeah. So James, what do our kids do right now? What do we do? Because my kids are growing up in this environment and they're looking at it saying, they watch all these shows, anime and all these other things where people will give up a healthy arm or, give up some part of their humanity in order to acquire a superpower. And if you look at it throughout history, it's not just Japanese anime. It's Marvel Comics, it's Captain America. It's this concept that as humans, our human frailty makes us less, and that we can become better if we are enhanced. So, you can read, a quantum computer can do much more than the human brain. Therefore, we are better off if we attach our brains to a computer that operates at faster speeds and is capable of more, and we can have this enhanced human experience. Yes. And I asked my son once, would you cut off your arm, a healthy arm, to get a bionic arm? And he said, sure. And I was shocked. And I was like, what do you mean, sure? And he's like, well, what if I could save someone's life with my bionic arm? Why wouldn't I do that? And, that was just so shocking to me because I was like, well, then you wouldn't be human anymore. And the answer was, so what?
There you go. Those are the people that have not thought it all out yet.
Well, yeah,
that
and he
are
was a
seen as-
kid at that point, so of course not, right?
But that's important to hear it from a child's perspective. Very important, because they're the ones, their nervous systems, and if they're still growing, their bodies are changing, their biology is changing, their central nervous system is attuning to these new patterns that the brain has to deal with, and their value systems have been different. Children that have been born and had cell phones stuck in their mouth the moment they were born, their nervous systems are completely different. Most of them are media casualties. They don't have any social skills at all. They can't be in a conversation for a very lengthy amount of time before they have major anxiety because of the withdrawal effect of the electricity, because they aren't around the response, the stimulus, the phone, to text, to communicate, to check where I am, check what I'm doing. This has been planned a long time ago. So I've dealt with this subject matter with a lot of people, including teachers, people from churches, pastors, all talking about how technologies destroyed their family and destroyed their relationships.
Okay.
Just that part.
So
but forget everything else. Just that.
I will say, now a couple of years later, my son says, no, he wouldn't do that anymore. So it is interesting to me because all of these kids are beginning to push back. However, their lives are completely integrated into this technology. We can remember a time when it wasn't like that. I can remember, standing at a payphone, putting in, cents and just being able to say, hi, Mom, I love you. And then not talking to her again for 2 months because I'm on the other side of the world and there's no cell phones, there's no internet, there's no text messaging, there's nothing like that. So we can remember that time. It's, I have to explain to my kids what a landline is, right?
Because your biology went through the transition and had to go through all the training for the transition. They were just their impact on their nervous system was just immediate. So they had to deal with the effective instantaneousness while they were growing up immediately.
They're born into it.
They learned. Born into it, changed how they learned it. All the schools are using computers. They're not creating any contrast. A lot of the younger generation, they don't have any contrast, so they don't know what you're talking about because they haven't gone through any media fast where they've been forced to not interface with technology that affects the central nervous system because they want everything now. They want to be rich now. They want everything now. Everything's been freely available to them their whole lives in an instant. And then our generation and the people before us had to go through this big transition. So those two cultures clash, and it's affected the family unit. Just in family therapy, from communication I've had with psychologists, family psychologists, they've seen the technology completely, totally damaged the family unit.
Yes, I would say that it's very hard when you're dealing with teenagers who don't want to talk to their parents anyway, who now, even when you're around them, are just looking at their phones and it is an entire language, right? It is an entire, when you listen to them interact with each other, and I'm sure that happens to every generation in a way, but you hear that language of today, which is really quite fascinating in a sense to see how fast it is and how immediate. So like a kid who doesn't have a phone, who isn't allowed on a phone, isn't going to know any of this stuff. They're not going to know about all these memes. They're not going to know what these references are. They're not going to be able to communicate. They can't operate on the same playing field. It really is one of the most classist things you've ever seen. Right, that we've ever seen unfolding in front of us. And you're no longer the class you're born into. You're being separated by really your access to technology and the world that exists through this technology, and whether you can keep up or not. And if you can't, you're left behind.
Exactly. And that's
but then there's a whole part of the world that doesn't even have access to most of this, right?
Yes, they're not polluted. And
they're not polluted, but many of them are poor.
And how they talk to each other, is completely different than how they manage affairs. Things are a lot slower, way slower. Most of the current Generation X culture has not gone through any media fast at all. So they don't really know or understand the contrast, what it's like to not be around any technological impact like that. So you've put them all into a room out in the country somewhere where there's no phones, no books, no television, no screens, no nothing, and make them stay there for a couple of weeks. you're going to see some big changes.
It has to be a couple of weeks. I'm thinking of doing this with my kids, but I don't know. A couple of weeks. Well, I don't even know if I can do that.
You want to do it enough. I mean, you've got, depending on how old they are, that's a big withdrawal for a lot of people because they're going to go into a state of high anxiety and panic because they're out of touch.
James, they're in a state of high anxiety and panic anyway because of what they see on social media.
Well, they're going to be even more of one when they're not allowed anything to see or interact with anything. And that needs to be scaled by the people around them and for themselves. By the parents need to do that so that they have an understanding of who you were before all of this happened, because you operate differently than they do. And now they're expecting this generation, the wearables generation, those people are going to give up their human autonomy and anatomy because they don't know anything different, because they've grown up with this. So they will suicide out, those people. And that needs to be discussed by parents and educators and the technology companies and lawmakers, all of this stuff. But you don't hear any of this stuff going on because it's our behavior. It's behavior, and how we interact with each other ultimately is going to determine our destiny. And we're not remotely attached to all the devastating things that have happened, that have been exposed to us. Just how people responded to the Epstein files in a normal society without all the electronic activity intrusion, there would have been guns in the street and people would have been killed at another time. But since we're just so disassociated and detached from violence and feeling everything from all the technology that we use, nobody really responded in a fashion that was appropriate for the crimes.
But James, look at what we're talking about now. Look at what our kids are exposed to. If you take pornography as an example, it begins with gore, which are these videos that are extremely violent, that show people, even if it's a car accident, someone's head popping off or whatever. So our kids from a very young age get used to this extreme violence, which is then mirrored in these video games, right, which are also extremely violent. And you see things that I never saw, you never saw at that age. And then it goes from gore to child pornography, right? And from child pornography to the most extreme forms of pornography, whether it's involving animals, cruelty, violence, all of that. And so our children are growing up. These things are very real to them, but also they're disassociated.
Completely. That's why people aren't responding. People are not responding. They're under attack and under threat. Their physical autonomy and biology is threatened, but are not responding. This is why, like in cities like dense cities like Los Angeles, when people are laying down in the street dead, if that were to happen, most people wouldn't respond. They'd ignore it and walk past.
Okay, so when you talk about this in terms of cybernetics, right, and altering your humanity, and you're talking about really humanity ending, and we're giving up our human autonomy, our physical bodily autonomy to machines. We're giving up our brain, right, our cognitive liberty, right, because we're handing this over to brain-computer interface where we don't know whose thoughts are, whether they're our thoughts, someone else's thoughts, and so on. Even someone who's blind, who gets a bionic eye and feels like they can see for the first time, they have no idea if what they're seeing is real. Is it actually in front of them? Is what's being piped into that bionic eye really what you're seeing? And can that change, right? Can that be hacked? Can that be altered? Can that be manipulated? So we're talking about, when you talk about all of this, you know what I hear? I hear that you are altering human DNA and changing humanity into something else. And if you are a Christian, if you believe in God, then all of us know that when God sent his only son to earth, Jesus Christ, to die for humanity, the gift of redemption is only for mankind. It's not for machines. It's not for cybernetics. It's not for trans people who are part machine, part human. It's only for people who are as they were created. It's only for humans.
Yep. That's why I'm even doing this. Look, I thought when I was younger, when I found out about this in my 20s, I was optimistic. I was looking forward to the future. I was interested in all sorts of things. I had a totally separate career when I walked into this, and I thought it would be taken care of, because I never thought that our elected employees and people that were real Americans, real constitutional, law-abiding Americans that cared about the Constitution, I thought it would all be resolved and it would be fixed, and there'd be no way that the amount of damage that's been done to Americans, it's unfathomable. People don't realize that the amount of damage. I know you cover a lot on child trafficking, and that's very common. People talk about a lot, but they don't know that a lot of the child trafficking, the experimentation was for neuroscience. And they rationalize it because they says, well, the Soviets are doing this, or the Chinese are doing this, so we need to do this. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And that's the attitude from the people that are doing it, that made up these programs. The rationalization from CIA that sanctioned all of this and did all of this to us. No matter who volunteered or how it was done, what are you really doing? Because it all leads to exactly what you said, which is why I even bothered talking to the public at all, is because they're ending humanity and turning it into something else. Whether you're going to go along with it or not, you're going to have to decide, and you're going to have to take action, because nobody's going to come to save you. You have to completely reorganize how you are and what you are to the system, legally and on paper, and you're going to have to assert that, and you're going to have to make behavioral changes and habitual changes as well. I'm already talking about redoing all my communication phones. I've dumped all my computers. I have to redesign clothing I wear to protect me from EMF, create situations so that I'm protected when I sleep, protect my eyes from all the stuff that's coming out of these cameras on these phones, all this stuff. Because I don't want to be a part of what they're doing, because what they're doing is coming from a position of, you don't have a right to be here anymore, and we really don't care what you think, because we're the so-called elite, and we don't need you anymore, so get out of the way. Because it's that attitude that I run into now. The deciders that are determining what they're going to do and how they're going to use this technology on the public, and the arrogance. It's unbelievable that people think they're so entitled to have all of this information and do what they're doing without any public discourse or dialogue with anybody. And I'm not talking about government dialogue, because those people are useless. Because if I have to go talk to them and explain to them what I'm explaining to you, they shouldn't be in these positions. Ever. This conversation, and I don't mean Elon Musk coming out on a pay-per-view event that looks like TED Talks, where he sits and lectures everybody about how society is going to be, and then we just agree to it. And that's the way it's going to be. No, everybody's going to have to get involved on this one, because your children, how they are now, they'll be very different 10 years from now. If you don't keep them away from all of this stuff, they won't even be able to relate to you, because they will be having an experience in their reality that is not equatable to yours. It doesn't match it. They'll be your genetic offspring, but they won't be the human relationship that you planned on it being won't occur. And this is all for the new children that are coming in, and all the people that are participating in all of this stuff. So the only way to win is not to play and not to participate. And I'm not saying that's an easy thing to do.
No, it's a very hard thing to do, actually.
It's a very hard thing, because technology does have benefits. But if it's not discussed very loudly and very clearly by the people that are putting it out, then we've got a big problem. And that's where we're at now. That's where we're at now.
So you're saying you're not talking about conversations with elected officials. You're talking about conversations with who? With technology companies?
Yeah, they're not they buy media space time. They buy it, and they get themselves on through PR firms and everything onto all these programs discussing what they're doing without discussing the media ecological effects of what they're doing. It's the effects of what they're doing. This is why I told you when I saw you last time, you need to interview Andrew McLuhan. His whole field and his grandfather was Marshall McLuhan. His entire meme and everything has to do with the relationship between behavior, human beings, and technology. And I've interfaced with him and his father when he was writing The Laws of Media, which is all about our relationship with technology and how it provides service or destroys us. That's what it's all about. And people look up all this stuff, they will see this. All of that I'm talking about, you can go find it, but it's not generally discussed. Because when people talk about mind control, they don't talk about, all the authors that have, and neuroscientists that have been involved studying how language functions, how resonance functions with electronics, how hypnosis works, and all of these tools have gotten the technologies companies into a position where they build the technology for the effect that they want, right? And then they don't tell you about those effects at all. This has come out in movies. I think that the film was the social.
Oh yes,
that one. The social experiment or whatever. It got into all that, but it didn't get into the fundamentals of how social media was born.
Yes.
Where it came from.
I know the film you meant. It was really about Facebook. It showed how, for example, how your child breaks up with a boyfriend or a girlfriend and they don't pick up their phone. And so they will deliberately send those notifications, right, to try to draw them back in. It'll be something related to that friend group or that person or whatever. And it's really about how social media interacts. And I think that was the beginning of people realizing that many of these people that work at run these social media platforms don't allow their own children to go on there because they know how damaging and controlling it is.
They know, but they've got to get you to agree to it. Because if you agree to it, then they don't have any problem with it. It's another thing that's been discussed in black magic and Satanism. One of their rules, their metaphysical rules, is they can do whatever they want to you, but they've got to give you free will, and they've got to get you to agree what they're going to do to you. First, they tell you what they're going to do to you. Then they've got to get you to agree to it. And once you agree to it, then they're off the hook.
So you know what
they know about.
You know what that is, James?
They know about cause and effect. They know that.
That is the authority that God gives us as human beings. When He gave us free will, He gave us the authority to exercise our free will. And so what the devil needs you to do is he needs you to invite him in. He needs you to he needs you to take agree. That authority that was given to you by God, because when He gave you that freedom to make your own choices, and He wants you to choose to give it to Him. Once you give Him that authority, that is the end of your free will.
That's the end.
There's no more free will after that, because now He has you. That's why, honestly, every morning, every day, if I forget in the morning, I say, not today, Satan. I do not give you my authority. All of my authority I give to Jesus Christ. I give to God, and I reject you outright. And I say that over and over again. Sometimes I say it 20 times a day if I need to, because even if you have an emotion or you react in a certain way, maybe you get angry. And you know that you shouldn't be getting angry. Or maybe you're just being ornery because you're having a bad day. And you know you shouldn't. Yeah. That's giving you authority to something dark. That's not giving you authority to God. And so even then I take it back and I'm like, I did it again. Okay, I'm sorry. I take my authority back. I do not give my authority. I reject that behavior. I apologize. For these feelings. Sometimes it's just a conversation between me and God.
Yeah, that's covenant law.
Right. That's covenant. And so that's my cognitive liberty. That is under threat right now. The MKUltra of the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, that was all the hypnosis and this and that. Those experiments were all leading to this place where we are on the verge of losing our ability to not only own our own thoughts, own our humor, own our creativity, own whatever it is, right? But even our ability to discern whether these are my thoughts or yours.
Correct. That's why President Barry Soetoro came out and said arrogantly, he says, well, soon people are not going to know what's real and what's not anymore. And he knows.
And you mean, I have to keep saying it, you mean Barack Obama, because every time you say Barry Soetoro.
Well, I'm trying to help him out so he can come back to who he really is, because he hasn't really talked about who he really is, because he doesn't know, because he's been cut off from who he really is for so long. Now, and I bring this up, and I keep bringing it up to the public because they don't understand the effects of induced trauma and the use of induced trauma in the political space. Because it's all about, I mean, people, when they think of MKUltra, they think of assassination. That's minor and to what the capabilities are and what it was used for. It was to create modeling human behavior, design human engineering for political purposes, whilst keeping that's an obedient robot that responds to a handler and then goes out into social space, creates a persona about who and what they are, and then follows orders, whilst the host, the original core personality, is not interested in being accessed at all. And that's Barry. Barry's a very disassociated person. Very disassociated. The original person, nobody's even talked to him before. That hasn't happened. Nobody's talked to him before.
How do you know
he
this,
hasn't had a
James?
conversation with anybody.
Because some people will say to you, "Oh, that just sounds crazy," and you made the reference to his wife Michelle Obama being Michael and him being transgender. How do you know that? I mean, some people will say that's just conspiracy and there's no real evidence
he'll
of
tell
that.
you. He says you look at the evidence when he's talking, because his central nervous system is fragmented. That's why, when I talk to friends, they go, Mama Michael. They said, so did you see what Mama Michael said? Because they're referring to President Obama, because when somebody's been interviewing him in the past, they'll call Michelle Michael, because his core self is fractured. The real person can't get out. It's blocked because he's not allowed to be himself.
That's not just a slip of the tongue. That's not just a sleight of hand. No. That's not just a mistake.
No, that's an abreaction. It's referred to. It's an abreaction to trauma. When you can't make an accessing cue is when you're asked a question and it creates a transderivational search within the person, where they have to access internal memory and dialogue and say an answer. And when he was asked about Michelle, he went, Michael. And then he corrected himself. Michelle. And people joke about it all over the place.
Yeah.
But it's a response to a compartmentalization personality. Because, and I bring that up because the National Security Agency, and when they instituted the National Security State in 1947, it was based on dissociative identity disorder. Dissociative identity disorder is compartmentalization of information from the host brain.
Yes.
So you have a bunch of personalities outside that don't know each other, but they're part of a whole. And that's how the whole agency and national security state was designed after that, to maintain secrets. Yes. Because you can have somebody that's in a dissociative state, like Barry and many others out there, that can maintain secrets because they don't even know who they are, because they have a fake personality that is sort of like the concierge that protects the inner person. This is why when we wrote Operation Mind Control, the second volume, it was all the effects of the neuroscience up to that point. So when we were meeting with psychologists and psychiatrists, a lot of the people that have been traumatized and have been in experiments, they had dissociative identity disorder, but it wasn't called that back then. And they didn't know how to treat it either. I remember Walter being on the phone with psychiatrists, and I was in the same room, and they didn't know how to treat anything. In fact, they were experimenting with me and the psychologist on how to treat that, how to reintegrate a person's personality back to whole from what it was, because it was shattered when it was younger, or when it was tortured, or when it was used for something beyond the person's capability of protecting themselves.
Can it be made whole?
This is compartmentalization.
James?
That's what compartmentalization is.
Can it be made whole? Is that even possible?
Yes, but it takes an enormous amount of time and therapy, and for a person to be from a dissociative state into a dissociative state, it takes time, because the brain wants to protect itself. So, in a therapeutic sense, you have to meet with a very skilled professional that can notice the compartmentalization, do something that's often referred to as a town meeting, That means being able to access all the personalities of the individual, get them all to agree, and then reframe the identity from the core person to the legitimate person who they want to be. We wrote an extensive chapter about this in Operation Mind Control, the follow-up, about a guy that was representing himself in court who was an insurance salesman that was involved in the intelligence community, that was completely fractured, and he had an attorney. This was a very respected business professional, by the way. It wasn't like a broken drug addict in the street. They were representing themselves in court, and they had a court personality. They had a personality that dealt with us, Walter and I. They had a personality that dealt with their wife and a bunch of other things. And when we were trying to access his story and interview him while he was in prison, we had to get permission from all the personalities, all 16 of them. And this is, again, this is not new. This is on video from people that have experienced this. This came out from the Franklin cover-up. Franklin cover-up,
which was the abuse of all those boys at the Franklin school. But James, it's so interesting that you brought up that example right now, because what I was thinking as you were talking is what this always reminds me of and brings me back to is satanic ritual abuse. This is exactly what they do in satanic ritual abuse. They use narcotics, they use ritual, they use all these different things to get you to become disassociated from who you were. And what happens, and this is the same thing that has been used in the Hitler Youth with young people, with the Cubs of the Caliphate, that were the ISIS youth for young Islamic terrorists, and the same with Joseph Kony in Africa, who had the largest army of child soldiers. I was in the jungles of Central African Republic with children who had been rescued, who described to me this entire process and the way Kony would do it, whereas he would get these children, and particularly if you had a sibling or you had a best friend or whatever, they were very aware of these relationships. And if one child or multiple children tried to escape, one example that the boys gave me was that they would get you'd have to murder your own sister or your own friend or your own brother or all this group of kids. And then they would get you to do it in a way that completely shatters your identity. It
shatters and fractures the ego of the individual that does it. Yes, because the moment they do that, then there's a big change that happens.
They don't know. They don't know how to become the person they were before. They can't go back.
Right, because if they become the person they were before, they have to meet the trauma again.
And deal with it. And they have to accept the fact that so for some of these kids, they would make them bite each other to death. Okay, so you're tasting the blood. Nothing could be more personal, more painful, more traumatic. And this was a standard thing.
Kinesthetic response, so feeling of the body, olfactory, get all the senses involved, and the taste and the everything that the person's hearing, acoustic space is all covered. And then they do induce a traumatic event, which will fracture. So the brain has to adjust the individual at that point. And then after it's done, then they loop it. It's looped, and you reinduce the trauma and just talking about it. You don't need to do anything. You just keep talking about it. And then you embed the language within the trauma. And then the nervous system, it's in a heightened state. When it's in that state, that's when you embed and put all the codes, cues, triggers, and language patterns for somebody that will be handling that person from that point onwards. That was neuroscience that was going on a long time ago, where they had to figure out ways of inducing obedience out of people through trauma. Those are the things that you hear from Kathy O'Brien. She's stuck in that
survivor of MKUltra and sex trafficking.
Yes. Yeah, and because Walter and I knew about her and her husband at that time it was happening, and many other people.
Very famous. I've met Kathy. Very famous, very well known.
Yes. That aspect was a stepping block to the brain-computer interface and everything that's now. They took the neuroscience of all of that, and now it was utilized to get us into position to accept all of these things that they're about to do to us. Because a good portion of the population, they are on psychiatric meds already to deal with just trauma. Forget what they know. There's that. So you got to 50% of the public's there already. Then you've got the other half, the public, that is already using technology on top of that and spending an enormous amount of time in disassociative states looking at screens all day long.
And,
that's how
and
they
doing
did
it willingly. Let's not forget that thing about giving you authority,
Never forget
right?
that part.
Giving yourself up willingly, because what happens with the trauma is you're doing this so that you break their will to fight you. And then, you know what was interesting, James? These boys all told me how Joseph Kony would not give you a new name or a new identity until you'd proven yourself and you'd crossed this line, basically. And then there would be a ceremony. Yes. And in that ceremony, he would basically present himself as your savior. You would be elevated and recognized, right? It was a celebration, this ceremony, of you becoming this new warrior. Right. And so now
this was illustrated. If everybody wants to go and look in the Bourne Supremacy film franchise with Matt Damon, where he goes back to home where the trauma was done, the most important giveaway of the entire film series is where the psychiatrist is saying, well, you agreed to be here. And then he uses leverage to say, you said you would do anything to protect the United States. And you said you would do all that. We can't just wait all day for you. And because his job then is to kill somebody that he doesn't know on the other side of the room.
Yes.
And he sits there, and the camera, the way the director put it is, they put a close up showing the eye and the change that takes place. The decision had to be made. In order to create an assassin, you've got to get them to agree to it, to turn them into something of their own conscious volition. So they show on camera, they do a close-up of the eye, he puts his head up, he looks, the decision's made, he shoots the gun, and right after that, just like you said, the actor on the other side of him said, congratulations, welcome to the program. You are no longer Michael Webb or Jason Webb, you're now Jason Bourne.
Jason Bourne, exactly. Then, you get given a new name.
Yes, because you have to brand the new identity coming in because you've crossed a line. And now it's from that point, because previous to all that, showing that in the movie, which encapsulates all of MKUltra into that moment, because that was used for assassinations. He's going to go out and use that tech to kill. And be dissociated to kill and do so on command whenever and not be attached to it and barely even remember it. That's one aspect. That's the killing part. But they don't talk about all the political stuff and all the social influence.
The behavioral stuff and the social control.
Yes. That singers, actors, public people that you see in the media that are influencing and going out and talking in public. A lot of them are that way. They're not the real people. They're not there. Like if I were to sit down and talk to Barry Soetoro, I'd talk to him as Barry, but I'd have to alter his state to get him in to be Barry. And that would I'd have to use some type of stimulant or drug to get him to do that. Because that's the amount of restriction the identity has on dealing with the core person is so strong that they will resist somebody that introduces that subject matter. So take everything I said in the last 10 minutes, and then you put that into the United States. And that behavior is prevalent everywhere now, right?
Yes.
So then those type of personalities are the same people that will walk straight into the brain-computer interface, and they will give up their human autonomy. They already feel dead anyway. They feel dead. I've interviewed loads of these type of people, lots. And it's the therapeutic metaphor, or the reframing as it's referred to in therapy, is it takes time, and the same process to get the person to become a killer is the same process reversed and to become healed and whole. Very important, and it takes time.
And a theme that I see running through this, James, is isolation, because what's happening to us is you talk about coming into a restaurant and it being quiet because people are sitting next to each other, but they're physically isolated from each other because they're not physically present. They're physically present. Their body is there, but their mind is not there. And then on top of that, there's further isolation because as you are in your feedback loop and on your technology, your world is becoming narrower and narrower and narrower. They're sort of uniquely tailored, right, by the algorithm to exactly
Yes.
who you are. And so
Yes.
it'll, two people sitting next to each other, it'll have trending on Twitter. It'll be two completely different things trending on X, because it's not really trending on X. It's trending on X in your isolated feedback loop that is now
Yes.
further and further. So you're becoming more and more isolated from your own family, your friends. That's why the family unit is breaking down from
That's right.
from your society, your peers, your mentors, potential mentors, right? You don't even know how to talk to them, the kids that are coming up. And then of course, we're more and more isolated from each other because all this work that they've put into dividing us as human beings has now we're participating in that further isolation, because some people will hear this and say, oh, I know all about MKUltra. And then other people will hear it and say, these people are nuts. What are they talking about? Yeah. Right? Because we're becoming so geographically and intellectually, cognitively isolated from everything around us. And that is 100% intentional. And the technology allows them to make that very personal to every single unique individual on the planet.
You got it. That's exactly right. So what you just said is the preparation to give up your humanity and fuse with the machines, and do so without any reluctance at all. And that's why I'm even talking in public, because once you cross over, you can't go back. Or if you do go back, you won't be the same person anymore, because of they're gonna open up the bandwidth of the brain, and there's already talks about reforming the entire prison culture and reforming law having to do with if a person is sentenced for murder and they're going to go in the system for 30 years to life, they will have a choice whether or not they want to go through a screaming scramble to alter their brain memories and change them entirely, and go through a plane where they give up themselves to science and for a reduced sentence. It's already being discussed, and there's a lot of information about that coming out now because of the economics of it, because people are not rehabilitated by prison whatsoever. It's just a business. Has nothing to do with them. It's nothing to reform behavior going on in there. Mm-hmm. So they're going to induce this and bring it in as a tool to reframe behavior, which is what the whole thing is about. But they've got to do it to get you, entice you to get those people to do it. It all comes down to that part, because you do have a choice. And the only reason I come out in the public and discuss this stuff is because to raise the alarm, to remind people to put their foot down now, because the bridge that we're about to cross, we're going to have a whole population of humanity will split, and you'll have the cybernetic people that have immersed into that position, which is a completely different reality. And those people will be offered new medicines. They will be offered longer life. They will be offered new skills and talents. They will be able to control their dreams. They're already experimenting on the public, having to do with culture jamming in dreams and getting the public to participate in it. They did it during one of the big sporting events. They experimented on people's dreams, advertised to go into their cognitive off hours, so to speak, and then report back to corporations.
Well, but James, it begins with the prisoners, right? And I mean, some people are dumb enough to think that it's just going to stay in the prisons. Of course, it's not going to stay in the prisons. Then it's okay, poor people, right? If you would you like to feed your children? Would you like a roof over your head? Would you like a warm bed to sleep in? We can help you, because already there's people that sign up for clinical trials with drugs for the same reason. So they're going to exploit any vulnerability they can. And this brings me back to something you said earlier in the interview. You said we need to have a conversation about it. We need to discuss it. We need to stop it, or we need to regulate it, limit it. We need to protect ourselves against it. All of those things overlook the one factor. They go against the one factor here that they need in order to be successful, which is they need full compliance. That's why when they tell you about a digital currency, they say to you, it doesn't work unless everyone has a digital currency. Well, what do you mean? So what that means is you are now taking away my right to choose, my free will, my freedom, my liberty, because you're going to tell me that, well, this society that you're talking about, where we're split between those who are rewarded for giving up their humanity and becoming cybernetic or part machine or whatever it is, they're going to be rewarded. Just like today in cancel culture, right? If I tell the truth about something and they don't want me to, I get punished for that. But if I lie about it, if I lie about COVID, if I pretend that COVID, was really not a bioweapon, if I pretend it was just an illness, if I pretend that there was no man-made interference because viruses replicate differently in hot and cold climates, but this one didn't, if I lie about that, you're going to reward me. You're going to promote me. You're going to give me a big job on CNN. I'm going to get paid millions of dollars.
Relevant. Yes.
Or yes. I'm going to become socially irrelevant and outcast because I'm going to be punished for it. And this comes back to something that you have in your lawsuit, which is informed consent. This is why it was so important to them to push these vaccine kill shot mandates on everybody, because informed consent, once again, comes out of where? Comes out of the Nazis and the Second World War. It comes to address the absolute horror of people like Dr. Joseph Mengele and what he did, to prisoners of war and to Germans, by the way, and not just to the Jewish people, but to the Romani, the Gypsies, and disabled people, and anyone that they considered undesirable. So it came out of these forced medical experiments on human beings. This thing that you cannot do this to us without our consent, right? And it needs to be informed consent. So now they don't want us to have informed consent anymore. And this is why I made a comment that they went nuts about this on Fox, right? When I said this on Fox, because they asked me about Fauci saying, I am science, and if you criticize me, you're criticizing science. And they said, what do you think? And I said, well, I talk to a lot of people who don't see Fauci as science. They see him more as Dr. Joseph Mengele, the doctor of death. Right. And people went crazy and said that I was disrespectful and I was anti-Semitic and all this. And none of that was true. I think, 99% of people knew that wasn't true. But what was significant about that? Mengele was one of the main reason that we have the Nuremberg Code, which protects us from medical experimentation. It protects us. In fact, it guarantees informed consent. That's what it does for every citizen worldwide. And they need to get rid of that. They don't want that.
Yeah, they've got to get you to agree. I keep going back to this because when I have people contact me that are victims, and I'll speak to them privately, and it's blame, 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 and then how do I fix it? And I have to go through a sort of reframing process with them to get them to understand that they agreed to all this. Which is that's a big thing to get somebody to do, because the vulnerability, and you have to take responsibility for governing thyself. Govern thyself or be governed. And that has to do with informed consent. And what I'm seeing through the brain-computer interface quantum community is the informed consent aspect of it, the language used to describe it, and that will be used for law, that will be in the terms and agreements, is not codified at all, because they don't know how to codify it, because they don't know the language to use, because it's essentially the English language has been one way, and now they're going to be entering a situation where now they're fused with machinery, and that's a completely, totally different type of experience that is not cataloged or understood at all. And they're expecting everything's going to be the same, and it's not at all. So you have a bunch of unqualified people in multiple countries that are going along to get along without discussing what informed consent is going to be in the language, because it has to go eventually put into law. And it goes to legislators, and then goes to the courts and so forth, because that hasn't been discussed with the public yet. And these technology companies, they just want you to participate.
Yeah.
They don't need you to know anything.
No.
They just want you to participate. So my thing is, let's not participate and let's put a buttress between all of this. And let's not stop allowing ourselves to listen to the technological overlords who are basically essentially putting us into a very dystopic, hypnotic state of technocracy.
Yes, because
that's what their aim is.
You know, that election example that I gave you, right, of that human being standing next to the machine while I put my vote in. Well, in future, that could be a robot standing there. And when I ask a question, right, when I ask a question, I don't even get an answer. I get told, I get arrested for asking a question.
Yes.
Right?
That means so they're already violating and getting away and trying to legislate consciousness and get used to the fact that they're legislating consciousness by controlling speech. Who is doing that? Everybody knows who's doing that, who's put it up, who you're not allowed to talk to, what are you not allowed to say, and which is stupid because if you don't have free will and free speech, you can't have any conflict resolution. So they're really screwing themselves.
Well, no, they don't want conflict resolution. They want us at each other's throats.
Yeah, but you and I do. If I have an argument with somebody, we want resolution.
Yes.
I want resolution.
Yes.
To whoever it is.
Sure.
But they don't.
No.
They don't.
No.
They want us to comply and head that way. But the way it's being done is that you have an unconscious response to compliance. And that doesn't mean by lying by omission. That's to put you in an altered state and getting you to agree to it. When you go into a coffee house or a restaurant or someplace where there's a lot of social interaction, people are in an altered state. That's not the normal state of human behavior, is to be slouched down, staring at a phone for 12 hours and be completely dissociated. But that's where you get consent, though. Because that's where when people update all of their apps and all of their phones, they just press the button without even thinking about what they're doing. Because it's an unconscious response. That's what they're doing. That's how they got to get this thing down. Is that they got to get everybody into a resource state so they agree to it. Because if it's explained to anybody, generally, they would not agree to it.
No.
But since nobody reads their contracts, they don't understand how it's written. They don't understand how the language and codification of the words is used in law. Because, for instance, the word person means 50 different things in law. What does that mean? They don't read and don't understand any of that, so they don't even know what they're signing up for.
No.
This is why I advocate people rebutting all these contracts, giving notice to Apple and all these technology companies that are using this stuff, and stating your position early before all of this stuff starts kicking down on, and because it's going to hit mass. You're going to see the push to create wearables to be fashionable. Apple is already putting out wearables right now. They're pre-advertising in front of everybody. So's Meta. They've got to get it to be fashionable. They're going to advertise and capture and get these people into altered states. So this will induce and will walk right into it. This is how when you go to a hypnotist and you want to stop smoking, you have this really horrible behavior and you're going to modify that. And this, your body's involved, your mind's involved, but you want to quit smoking. So you go to a hypnotist. How does the hypnotist do that? How do they get you to agree to it? That process is the same process that they're going to be using on the public. They're going to put you in an altered state, change the language, keep you distracted, and walk in unconsciously.
They're already changing the language, James. They're changing the language from female and male. I mean, something that you would think is so basic because there's biological evidence right in front of your eyes. They're changing it from breastfeeding to chest feeding. You know, from hetero.
Saul Alinsky.
Yes,
Saul Alinsky said, if you want to control people, you control the language. Not the verbal language that we speak to each other now, but the written language. Because that's where all the power comes from ultimately, because law is written on paper. They use the technology of the phonetic alphabet and the spatialization of the codification of the language to control law, and they will use that to control all of this. This is why when I've been speaking to Brandy Smith about this, I said, they can't verbally explain what the effects are in a language that people will even understand. And it will have to be altered for lawyers, if there's going to be lawyers, because AI will probably get rid of those people too, how this is going to be codified into law.
Well,
How are they
James,
going to do that?
people assume that the Bill of Rights and the Constitution applies in the digital realm, but it doesn't. No one's ever
it does
applied
not.
it.
That's correct. And because there's going to have to be a whole, on top of it, on top of the Constitution and Declaration, there's going to have to be neurocognitive rights. And if they aren't done by our government, then you need to do them. You need to say what your neurocognitive rights. I've already done that and put it on the record. And I've done it for a lot of other people too. I've stated what my neurocognitive rights are, that nobody has access to my thoughts. I don't agree to that. I don't agree to access to my genetic codification, anything. I've done it in a very lengthy paperwork, and then filed it with the UCC. I filed it with the local government. I put it all on the line to tell them.
Is this something all of us can do? Can we steal your list?
Well,
file it.
What I did in regard to all of that is I created a document. I set up a Patreon account, and I've used the profits from the Patreon account from people that want those documents to go out and fight this in the street, because nobody's supporting what I'm doing in regard to this, or Brandy or anybody else.
No.
Because there's nobody even talking about it at all. And we don't get support from the United States at all. We don't get support from anybody. I have to meet with private funding people to get, to make them understand what I'm talking about with you, and then get them to finance it. But it's not been done. They don't realize what has happened, and the fact that the transhumanism has a cutoff point, but ultimately it has to do with law. Because if you want to get remedy, you're going to have to put something down on paper and contract with the people that you send it to. So if I send a document to Apple and they don't respond in 30 days, they do agree to it. It's silence by acquiescence.
Okay, but
silence by acquiescence. So they have a chance. They have a certain time to rebut.
Yeah.
They need to rebut as well.
But do you have a cheat sheet that other people can use?
Yes. Yeah. When they join Patreon, I send it to them.
All right.
And then I tell them what to do.
So they find you, James Martinez, on Patreon?
Yeah. Patreon.com, James Martinez Media.
James Martinez Media on Patreon.com. I don't know why you haven't.
That's the most constructive thing they can do that doesn't cost them a lot.
Right.
And the financing is for me to go out and raise hell with this particular thing.
Yeah.
And to also, so they've put on record to the system where they stand. Because to me, this is why I'm here. My whole incarnation is about freedom of thought and maintaining that, or at least having a choice about that. That's been since I've been 20 years old, all I've cared about is maintaining that you have the right to be you. Anything that's going on in your head as a response to your neighbor, because you're pissed off at your neighbor, for example, and you want to go hit him with a baseball bat, that doesn't mean you're going to do that. It's a response, emotional response to anger. But people want to legislate that and use pre-crime to have the cops show up at your house. If you are upset about when certain religious people are doing something, that's a response of conflict that you have a human thing to respond to. It doesn't mean anybody has a right to come in and legislate your emotions or feelings or statements about that.
Or punish you for it,
doing.
By the way. Punish you for it, lock you up for it.
Thank you. That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's exactly what I'm talking about. And that's what they're planning on doing. Because they're going to reframe society from the brain down. Okay,
so James, am I right? I'm going to calling up your lawsuit. This lawsuit that it's not yours. I shouldn't say that, but this lawsuit that you have consulted on, right? And been a part of. So this is against Palantir Technologies, Inc., Peter Thiel individually and officially. And then you name Alex Karp, Shyam Sankar, and all officers and directors of Palantir Technologies. Now, we'll have to go to Palantir and ask them for their comment on this.
The first paragraph is the most important part, because it says the living man and the living woman.
Okay, I'll read
That's
it.
Different.
I'll read it. Verified complaint for damages, injunctive relief, declaratory relief, and jury demand. Comes now. The plaintiffs, John Doe and Jane Doe, private living man and woman, proceeding sui juris and not as sureties or representatives of any artificial legal fiction, who hereby submit this verified complaint.
Okay, this is key. Yeah. Because the people that are the plaintiffs in that, they've already given notice to the system. Okay, so their situation is quite different. And if you see I think it's in the opening couple of pages, it refers to the clone document. The clone document, or it says in there. So that the same paperwork that I give to people when they want to rebut the system and state on the record where they stand, those people have already filed that. So they've already given notice to the system. Right. So when that's mentioned, these people, it has to do with that. Yes, that's what it has to do with. Yes.
So this is against all these people at Palantir. And it says this action arises from defendants' development, deployment, and profiting from artificial intelligence and synthetic intelligence systems that unlawfully interfere with the rights, liberties, and private lives of plaintiffs and all similarly situated living men and women. So what is synthetic intelligence?
Synthetic intelligence is if I access all of your keystrokes in your computer and I build up a personality of those keystrokes, an algorithm that says this is who Lara Logan is, that's not who you are. That's a synthetic idea of who you are. It's not the all-encompassing who Lara Logan is. That's what I'm referring to.
I see. And so what was interesting to me about this lawsuit is that, we touched on it a little bit before. Palantir obviously is not the only company collecting data, but the breadth of what they're doing. You said in this lawsuit, it says they've designed and integrated technologies that simulate cognition, predict human behavior, manipulate decision-making, and impose digital surveillance on individuals without informed consent. These technologies constitute an invasive merger of machine reasoning with human neurological processes, amounting to trespass, coercion, and violations of cognitive liberty. And this is where you refer to the Clone Act, actually. Plaintiffs filed and recorded in the public records of Pima County, Arizona, the Clone Act of 2025. Which it's included here, provides controlling definitions for artificial intelligence, synthetic intelligence, neurotechnology, smart dust, and related systems by operation of law and constructive notice, right? Defendants are bound by these definitions. So what on earth is smart dust?
That means they're controlling the language because they asserted themselves onto the legal system through their legal processes. This means it was served, it was sent, it was copied, it was a receipt has come back, all these things that proof of service, this has all occurred already. So these individuals are highly informed of what's going on.
Right.
And they're coming in through the living man, which is different than the corporate fiction of your all capital name. They know the distinction. Because all of your bills are coming through to the estate, which is your all capital name associated with all your bills and everything having to do with commerce. Because the living man is different than the one, and you need to be able to distinguish that. And people need to understand there's a big difference between the living man and the all capital name that comes in and all your bills and all your legal things that come through the mail having to do with money or property or ownership. Those are different.
Now, some people may not be familiar with Palantir. Obviously, they're well known or best known for their work with the Department of Defense and Homeland Security when it comes to war, about going to war, right? And defense of this country. And of course, they work with intelligence services. But then there's the economic side of Palantir that also is underpinning many, industries in this country across the economy. And it is the sort of the breadth of their technologies that I hadn't really given much thought to, because it's all those cameras in the airports. It's data collection that goes far beyond just what you might be doing on the internet or what you might buy from some store. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, it's like it's a daisy chain. They've daisy chained all the technologies and companies into one sort of net. So they can take audio, anything that's been digitized, acoustic space. They can trap all that stuff because your phone is constantly always on. And they can take all that stuff, which you give away, like we've discussed. You give all that away. and then they can build an algorithm based upon the data. Like I can build an algorithm, and with that algorithm, I can predict what you're going to eat for dinner tomorrow, or what you're going to say, or how you're going to respond. And people have already, I've come across people many times that said, I needed to get a new car because my thing broke down, and then suddenly my phone's showing up with all these new car advertisements on it. Mm. What is that? That is algorithmic predictive behavior, which the phone has synthesized from all the data that you've given to it, and it's given a response. It prompts you. It prompts you to make a decision. It's guiding you where you are thinking about. That is the type of very dangerous technology that's been used. That's just being used in commerce. That doesn't account for people that maybe have negative or criminal behavior, or somebody that may have an existing psychiatric problem, or schizophrenia or anything else.
What about encouraging a pedophile to go out? It's like encouraging a pedophile to go out and rape a child, right? I mean,
yes.
That's predictive.
That's one benefit of tech, because the tech now is trapped. All these guys are being trapped by, there's people online, there's To Catch a Predator, that guy, and all these people are being caught with this technology. And when they catch them, the impulse is stronger than the actually getting caught. The consequences of getting caught are not as powerful as the impulse to go out and do it. Because every time all of them get caught, they knew they were going to get caught, yet they do it anyway. What is that about? And how is technology being used? Because the people that are in those type of behavioral states, that is very conducive of years and years and years, 50, 60 years of child abuse in this country. Because I know you talk about a lot of child abuse, and it is the biggest in this country in terms of not just abuse, the act of the abuse, but the intelligence that was picked up from the abuse, the response to the abuse, all of that stuff. So these people are getting busted all over the place every single day. They can set up catch spots, traps in every city of this country, and they're all showing up there.
Yet they still do it.
But what I'm saying is that was perpetrated on the public by design from paperclip and all the science that came into the United States. So it's a long trip to present behavior and reality.
So, James, how important is this lawsuit, and what are the chances that it's going to have any impact on? I mean, Palantir is a giant, right? They make a fortune of money.
Well, I can tell you, I can talk to anybody in the world, and I will win the public court of opinion on that company and the nature of that company. That company will be destroyed. Its brand will be destroyed. Its reputation will be destroyed. All of that will be destroyed. Because there are people in Europe contacting me that can't stand this company already, and they're seeing how destructive it is. So, and it's being taken to other countries are rejecting it already. That's already happening, so that's a good sign.
Which countries have rejected it? Do you know?
France just dumped it. They rejected it, and then another country yesterday, I'm not sure which one did, they're getting rid of it as well because of the that small company, they don't just have access to you. They got access to all the bad guys too. So they got all they can blackmail all the bad guys if they want to. Well,
yeah, it's just like
Ericsson.
Just like Ericsson controls the national child exploitation hotlines in 152 countries. So they store all the child porn in over 150 countries around the world. They know everyone who's involved in child porn. And that means that they have the ability to blackmail anyone they want.
Yes, and it was because of what came into this country and was not stopped in the 50s, really. Was not stopped, that this is why we have this culture that we do in the United States that's so divided, so dysfunctional, so disassociated, so have total apathy, are non-responsive, and we're basically media casualties on a mass level. Where it's American culture, when I'm outside of the U.S. and I come into the U.S. and I haven't been here for a while, you can feel it as soon as you get off the airport, how a culture is and how different it is from the exposure of so much technology that's been placed on people, because it all comes out in the U.S. first. We're the most experimented on in the world, the United States.
So, James, just quickly here before we end this, because I know we've been talking for a long time, and it's a burden on people to listen to these things all the way to the end. So I'm very grateful for them. But so here is just an example of some of the things that are in this lawsuit that you have described, or that has been described here, is that plaintiffs allege they have been compelled to submit to biometric collection, including facial recognition, airport checkpoints, fingerprint face unlock on personal devices, under penalty of denial of travel or loss of essential device functions. Also, Palantir's platforms interoperate with biometric streams from airports, motor vehicle databases, retail cameras, mobile devices, and smart infrastructure, enabling continuous identification and tracking without plaintiffs' informed consent. Also, plaintiffs allege that operating system updates and app-level permission regimes function as covert data caption expansions that plaintiffs cannot meaningfully refuse without losing core communication and commerce capabilities. And plaintiffs allege that Google, Android, and comparable ecosystem data, searches, location, voice, app telemetry are routinely processed within or made interoperable with Palantir-style data fusion environments used by government and allied corporate partners. I mean, it goes on, alleged emergency services functionality such as 911 is engineered to operate even when phone services are limited, creating coercive dependency that ensures individuals must carry trackable devices at all times. I mean, this is just a small sample, and we'll post a copy of this lawsuit with the interview so that people can read through it and see. But when you get a sense of this, you start to see how pervasive. Is there anyone else who is as influential as Palantir, do you think? I mean, who are the comparable companies?
Google, Cisco Systems. There's a bunch of them that are they're it's like Lego pieces. Mm-hmm. Some are involved in the nanotechnology business mm-hmm. and creating motherboards out of the human body. Some are involved with data collection. Some are involved with surveillance, and they're all fused together. But Palantir takes all of that, and then puts it into one basket.
And that's why this lawsuit is going after them.
Yes. And it's basically designed to create public dialogue so this stuff can be rehashed out and reconfigured or stopped entirely.
Okay, so what are the chances this lawsuit goes anywhere? I mean, is this just a shot in the dark?
Well, we didn't think we didn't think it would win, not in a financial thing, but I have a lot of experts that are offering assistance behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And some things I know that could be done because I discussed them yesterday with somebody, but I'm not sure if it's the right move to make, because it would it'd be very dangerous. Even to make legal maneuvers that were discussed, be very dangerous. I'm not 100% if it's the right thing to do. Though morally, it's absolutely the right thing to do, because it's a train going down the track that's not slowing down, it's not stopping, it's just keeping going at the same rate. This is to basically designed to slow that train down mm-hmm. or stop the train. That's all. I don't expect a win out of this, because they're going to use any way to the judge is going to probably, any judge that signs off on this, and as soon as it gets down the line, they're going to try and throw this out immediately and do a motion to vacate for some technicality. That's what I expect, mm-hmm. but we'll see. I'm open.
Okay, James, where can people find you?
They can just go to patreon.com, James Martinez Media. They can go to freedomofthoughtfoundation.org. And those are the two places right there. Those are
the two most effective places?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I know that we're going to be talking about this more. I really appreciate it. It's always fascinating to talk to you.
Thank you for tackling this. It's a very complicated thing. So I appreciate it, everything that you've done.
Well, it's complicated, but also the truth is very, very simple. and that's why they try to complicate it, right? They try to make us think it's about, it's about all these very complex things. But at the end of the day, you either value your humanity or you don't. And I think they've tried to make sort of a negative out of our greatest strength, which is that sense of human frailty, those things that make us truly human. So whether it's that we make mistakes or whether it's that we can fix our mistakes, those things are great. I mean, even the ability to give your life. Right? A machine can't give its life. The life of a machine doesn't mean anything. But even someone who's been bad their whole life can, in a final act of redemption, do something great and give their life for someone else and gets an opportunity to choose God in that final moment. But that only applies to humanity. That is a gift that is for humankind. It's not for machines. It's not for hybrids. It's not for cybernetics and all the other things, right? And so that's how, to me, that this technology, much of it is as beneficial as it can be in certain ways. Its origins, the place it comes from, is a place of darkness because it's leading you away from the light. And that is the light of God.
Correct.
That's where it's taking you.
Perfect way to describe it.
That's where it's taking you.
Very good.
And so I know that all things that don't walk with God, I know who they walk with. I know who's luring you down that path. And if you start, we can talk about this more. I'd love to talk to you more about this actually with all the disclosure that's coming out. But if you start to look at it, NASA, all these places, these are occult organizations in many respects. And this forbidden knowledge, the knowledge that the Nazis had, where does all of this stuff go back to? It goes back to a German castle where they would have occult seances. And who are they calling on for that knowledge? They're not calling on God. They're calling on demons. And they're calling on the beast that is Satan, and that's their words. That's what they've written in their own historical documents. And so, what is all of this? It takes us back to something very, very dark, because what does Satan want you to do? He wants you to give your authority to him. He wants you to choose him over God. That's why they're looking for that God particle, that thing that makes us human, that we are born in the image of our Creator, right? And so we are born in the image of God. That's that gift. It's a gift, but it's only a gift to humanity. And so I'm going to hold on to that. I'm going to hold on to that with everything I got.
This is the resolution of your divine incarnation and your right to exist. That's what it's about. And your right to be human and all that entails, and the divine relationship that you've had since you were born and you chose to be here. That's what it's really about. It doesn't get to that point until people fully understand the stakes, but that's you encapsulated it perfectly, because that's what it all comes down to ultimately.
See, it's amazing. I don't have your knowledge and experience and, the depth of detail and everything that you have and your scientific understanding. But I know the difference. Like many people out there, I know what is right and what is wrong. And I know what is true and what is not true. And I know that when I feel when people drag you into dark places, and when people use deception instead of honesty and the truth, none of that ends well. It never does. And if you and if you follow the word of God, God asks us not to live in fear, not to live in darkness. He asks us to live in gratitude and joy and love. So anything that takes you away from that doesn't come from God. That comes from, another place. And I'm amazed actually at how much of this goes back to the occult and spiritual people that I talk to actually say that forbidden knowledge, or that occult type of knowledge that the Nazis received, that Jack Parsons, at Jet Propulsion Technologies received, that comes all the way back from the garden to the Garden of Eden, from the tree of knowledge, of forbidden knowledge. Mm-hmm. Right? That's where it really goes back to, from the beginning of time. So I choose God, and it becomes that simple. In the end, the choice before us is always simple. Do you choose good or do you choose evil? I choose good. I choose God.
Amen. I'm all for that. Yep. 100%.
So it's so great to talk to you, James. I know we'll be talking more And we will put, we'll put reading materials and anything that you want that you can recommend for people. We'll attach to this because it's a lot for people to think about. I want to urge them again to go to James Martinez Media on patreon.com. That's a whole new site for me to learn how to navigate, but it's worth it. It's worth it. I know from being your friend for a number of years now how much I've learned from you, and I just appreciate your patience. And I know you've given your whole life to this. This is all you do. This you know. I don't know how you get it funded. It's on a wing and a prayer, but you manage. And I think it's because you're doing something that really matters. And so I'm very grateful. And I look forward, of course, to speaking to you again. There's a lot more to talk about. And I would urge people who are watching this, please like and share and subscribe. Get this out to as many people as you can. You can imagine with content like this, it's not hard to fall foul of the algorithms. So whatever you can do to share this, whatever you can do to help us overcome those forces. And, we're not telling people what to think or how to think. We're just giving you knowledge so that you can make up your own mind. And I just want to say thank you. If you're still with us watching at this point, I am so grateful. Really, I am truly grateful. And I just want to say, as always, thank you for being bold enough to go rogue with Lara Logan.